call time, so we will try to get through as much as we possibly can, but I did want to give you all a couple of updates. Obviously, the president met yesterday with a bipartisan group of members who work on committees of jurisdiction. I can talk a little bit more about that, but I also wanted to give you an update on the work of our jobs cabinet, which will be central to our efforts, and especially in this period of time, where now a lot of these members are going to go back. They're going to work with their staffs. They're going to work with each other to see what the path forward is. So far, cabinet secretaries from our jobs cabinet, I should say, have made 27 calls to members, including 7 Republicans. Those are when they connected, of course. Our legislative affairs team has made 139 calls to members, their chiefs of staff and staff directors. 35 of those 99 calls to the House were to Republicans, along with 15 of the 40 calls into the Senate. This is obviously ongoing, and we will venture to provide you regular updates so you have a sense of what's happening. We've held 26 House and Senate staff briefings and 9 member-level briefings, including with Republican leadership and 5 bipartisan groups, and this is clearly picking up. Senior administration officials have also engaged with rural leaders, faith communities, and the private sector. They've held briefings with bipartisan groups of over 1,000 mayors and county elected officials, and have had one-on-one conversations with governors from both parties. I also wanted to highlight that this week is Black Maternal Health Week, and in its honor, today the Vice President and Domestic Policy Advisor Susan Rice are hosting a roundtable with women who will share their experiences with complications from pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum, the impact of postpartum post-childbirth, as well as their work in advocacy and research, highlighting the disparities that Black women face in maternal health. I think this actually started around 12:30, so I should say the event is ongoing. We also announced initial actions we are taking to address the maternal health crisis in the United States, including significant funding to reduce maternal mortality and morbidity rates, improve health equity, and race-based disparities nationwide, the approval of the first Medicaid Section 1115 waiver in Illinois to broadly extend postpartum coverage. This approval will help ensure access to vital healthcare services, promote better health outcomes, and reduce the rate of maternal morbidity and mortality. And obviously this is an issue we will continue to work hard on. I also just wanted to highlight that we're also hosting today a virtual small business briefing on the American Jobs Plan. Small Business Administrator, newly confirmed, Isabel Guzman, will join the event with thousands of small business owners to highlight how the American Jobs Plan supports small business. The plan the President has proposed provides direct support to small businesses by increasing access to federal contracts and investing more than $110 billion in financing and technical assistance programs. As you know, the President also attended a congressional tribute for U.S. Capitol Officer William Evans this morning. He paid his respects, for those of you who didn't see, to Officer Evans and met with his family. The President, following his remarks, I should say, the President offered his support to the Capitol Police, who have weathered great stress and responsibility since January's insurrection, in addition to sustaining the loss of another fellow officer. Finally, the President will deliver remarks tomorrow at the White House on the way forward in Afghanistan, including his plans and timeline for withdrawing U.S. troops in close coordination with our partners and allies and the government of Afghanistan, and its commitment to focusing on the threats and opportunities we face around the world today. We will have an advisory with more details out later today. We, of course, are doing a series of briefings throughout the day with all of you and others. I'm going to be limited in what I'm going to share from here because I don't want to get ahead of the President, but I will look forward to having a conversation with all of you in the coming days about the details of his speech. With that, go ahead, Alex.
Thanks. Let's start with Russia. Can you share any details on the proposed summit with President Putin? Where would it be? What would the topics be? And what was his response? And also, Putin himself suggested public talks with Biden in mid-March, and he was brushed off by the White House. So what's the change? What's behind the change in posture?
Well, let me first say that, as you note, the President had a call with President Putin this morning. We put out a readout of that, but let me reiterate a couple of the highlights for those of you who are following other pieces of news. During this call, they discussed a number of regional and global issues, including the intent of the United States and Russia to pursue a strategic stability dialogue on a range of arms control and emerging security issues, building on the extension of the New START treaty. President Biden also made clear clear that the United States will act firmly in defense of its national interests in response to Russia's actions, such as cyber intrusions and election interference. And he also emphasized the United States' unwavering commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The president voiced our concerns over the sudden Russian military buildup and increasing aggression on the border of Ukraine, and called on Russia to de-escalate tensions. So as it relates to your question, I will say that, our approach to our relationship with Russia is one where we certainly expect the relationship to remain a challenge. We expect there will be continued difficult conversations. We are prepared to confront those. But our goal is to have a relationship with Russia that is predictable and stable. And having a conversation or a dialogue, which the plans will need to be developed on. This is the first conversation about it at that level, of course. The purpose of that is to, of course, be honest and candid where there are areas where we disagree and have concerns, but also work together on areas where there is mutual interest. And that may relate to arms control, as we did with the extension of New START shortly after the president was inaugurated, or even working together on pursuing an Iran nuclear deal. So there'll be a range of topics discussed as we get closer and details are finalized. We'll share those with you, but we are just at the early stages of the discussions.
And then with respect to Russia's military buildup at the Ukrainian border, what is on the table to respond if Russia doesn't back down? I mean, are military options being considered?
Well, Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin are both in Brussels now. They are having discussions with their counterparts about a range of topics, including the military buildup on the border. So I won't get ahead of those discussions. I expect they will do a readout when those discussions conclude. Any approach or engagement with Russia or actions would be done in coordination.
And then one more on Afghanistan. Republicans are already talking as though the announcement has happened of the withdrawal of all troops by September 11th. And so I wanted to get your reaction to something Mitch McConnell just said. He suggested that it would put our NATO partners in a shared fight that we have not yet won. It would abandon the women of Afghanistan, whose freedoms and human rights will be in peril. He said that the administration plans to turn tail and abandon the fight in Afghanistan. So what is your response to this criticism and criticism from other Republicans that it's too soon without any plans to sort of maintain stability there?
Well, again, I will leave it to the president to lay out his specific plans for withdrawing troops, the reasoning, and his commitment to focusing on the threats and opportunities we face around the world today. But I will say that the president has been consistent in his view that there's not a military solution to Afghanistan, that we have been there for far too long. That has been his view for some time, well documented, well reported on. He believes that, and he remains committed to supporting negotiations between the parties, which many of you may be following, are resuming next week. And he also believes we need to focus our resources on fighting the threats we face today, almost 20 years after the war began. And so that's his approach and how he looks at this decision, but he will lay out more specifics tomorrow. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. You mentioned President Biden has been consistent. As a candidate, he told CBS that he thought a smaller footprint of troops should remain in Afghanistan in the case that terrorists reamass their capacity. But now he's committing to drawing troops to a number that is 0. Can you explain that change?
Again, I know we're doing a number of briefings with all of you where you will have all of these questions answered. I will say that the president's approach and his decision that he made was done through close consultation with military leaders, with his national security team, with partners and allies around the world, and with his objective in mind of ensuring we are focusing on the threats we're facing. We're doing that in close coordination with our partners and allies, and I will leave it to the briefings that you will be receiving and his speech tomorrow to outline more in more further detail.